like we might have Mr. Quattrocchi joining us. I'll give him a few seconds and we'll get rolling.
I can't get my camera to come on. Can you hear me?
Is that you, John?
That's me, but I can't get my camera on.
Okay, you sound a little muffled. Can you see us on the screen?
Yeah, I see you.
Okay. All right. Well, if you can see the evidence that's presented and you can see what's on the screen, then that'll be beneficial in that respect. So we'll go ahead and get started and hopefully get the camera to kind of come on at some point as we go along here. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Community Development Board, which is called to order at 1 p.m. on September 15, 2020. To ensure public safety and comply with the Governor's Safer at Home order in response to the COVID-19 virus, the Clearwater Community Development Board is holding a public meeting using communications media technology. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or any specific location, and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.545B2 of the Florida statutes. This meeting is being held through the Zoom platform and broadcast live on the city's website at https://www.myclearwater.com/government/council-meeting-streaming-videos, and also on YouTube at www.youtube.com/myclearwater, as well as the following public access TV channels: Spectrum Channel 638, Frontier Channel 30, and WOW Channel 15. If you want to participate in today's meeting and are not requesting party status, you may call in to 562-4646 and be placed on air to speak to an individual item. Or like any other CDB meeting, like Community Development Board meetings, you may provide public comment at the main library, council chambers, 100 North Osceola Avenue. We're going to continue now with our agenda and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. All please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This board consists of 7 members and 1 alternate who are appointed by the City Council and serve voluntarily. I am Michael Butskas. I will introduce the other board members, board attorney, and city staff, and ask they each acknowledge they are present and they can see the video feed and hear the meeting. Vice Chairman Anaskevich.
I'm Chris Anaskevich. I am present and I can see the meeting.
Brian Barker.
Present and I can see and hear the meeting.
Jordan Behar.
Present, I can see and hear the meeting.
Mike Flannery.
I'm present and I can see and hear the meeting.
Mary Lau.
I am present and I can see and hear the meeting.
John Quattrocchi.
I am present and I can see the meeting.
Alternate member Elizabeth Van Scoik. Don't believe she's on today. Jay Daniel, attorney for the Community Development Board.
Present and I can see and hear the meeting.
Mike Foligno, attorney for the city. You're on mute, Mike. There you go. If you can do that again so we can make sure we can hear you.
Yeah, it's on mute.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, he heard me since he came back, so I know he can hear and see the meeting. And then lastly, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development Director.
Good afternoon. I'm present. I can see and hear.
Thank you very much. If you are attending in council chambers, please remember to turn off your cell phone so it did not become a distraction during the meeting. To ensure a complete record of this board's actions, we ask that each individual wishing to speak, including the applicant, speak into the microphone, clearly state your name, and spell your last name for the clerk. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes from the last month's meeting. We actually have 2 sets of minutes to approve. First would be the minutes for June 16, 2020. If the board members have had a chance to review, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. This is Mary Lau, so moved.
Jordan Behar, second.
Mary Lau moved. Jordan Behar seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Or yes, either way. Any opposed? Okay, that passed unanimously. The next set of minutes are from our meeting on September 3rd, where we approved our procedures for today. Do I have a motion to accept?
Jordan Behar, motion to approve.
Second, Chris Anaskevich.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor say yes.
yes,
Yes,
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes are approved. Next order of business is citizens to be heard for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone on the phone wishing to speak to an item not on the agenda? Thank you very much. Is there anyone in council chambers wishing to speak to an item not on the agenda? It does not appear as anybody is approaching the podium. I will continue on then. We're going to continue on with our regular agenda. There are two types of cases that can be heard today, quasi-judicial and legislative. Today we have quasi-judicial hearings only, and we also have one appeal. I will outline the procedures for each of the hearings at the beginning of the applicable types of hearings. For our quasi-judicial hearings, all level 2 cases such as flexible development are considered quasi-judicial hearings. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the Community Development Board reviews the application, the staff report, correspondence, and all evidence presented today and makes a final decision subject to appeal. This board has previously qualified all the city staff who will testify as experts in their area of professional training, education, and experience. The list of city staff experts and their resumes are in the handbook located in chambers. Any other professionals who desire to be qualified as an expert witness are required to submit a resume by 5 p.m. 3 business days before the meeting to the assigned planner. These resumes were provided to the board in advance of the meeting, and the board should determine whether or not to qualify the persons as an expert and in what field of study. At the beginning of each level 2 case, I will ask that anyone who requested party status by 5 p.m. 3 business days prior to the meeting to join the meeting and state your reasons. Party status may be granted if the person requesting such status demonstrates he is a substantially affected person. The board will then determine whether or not to grant party status. The case will then proceed as follows: requests for party status, presentation by planning and development staff, 10 minutes maximum, presentation by applicant, 10 minutes maximum, presentation by persons with party status, 5 minutes per party maximum. Cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff, 5 minutes maximum. Cross-examination of witnesses by applicant, 5 minutes maximum. And cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status, 5 minutes maximum. Comments by the public, 3 minutes per person. And a reminder to anyone who wants to make comments, you should call in to 562-4646 when the case starts. At the time of the public comment, you will be placed on the air. Closing remarks by the planning and development staff, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by persons granted party status, 3 minutes maximum. And closing remarks by applicant, 3 minutes maximum. Then we will close the public hearing. We'll have discussion and vote by the board. As a reminder, anyone in attendance today who plans to speak to an agenda item will need to be sworn in by the clerk of court prior to speaking. For today's meeting, this will be done at the beginning of each case after it has been read into the record. Persons providing public comment by phone will be sworn in individually. And to ensure that you have been sworn in for the record, we ask that each individual wishing to speak, including the applicant, speak into the microphone, clearly state your name, and spell your last name for the clerk, and also affirm that you have been sworn in prior to starting your testimony or comments. With those procedures out there, let me go ahead, and my computer's beeping at me in the background. Let me turn that off. And we'll begin with the first case on today's agenda. First level 2 case is FLD 2009-08026A, Parcel A at 309 Coronado Drive. The applicant is Key Clearwater LLC. The representative is Hush Govi at Northside Engineering. And the location is at the southwest corner of 3rd Street and Hamden Drive. And the board is reviewing proposed amendments to approved level 2 flexible development application FLD 2009-08026. So do we have anybody on this case that has requested party status? My understanding is that there's no request for party status at all today. If someone from city can confirm that.
Just no party status.
Okay, so I'll skip that for the rest of the cases and on this one as well. Continuing on then, will all persons, I'll ask At this time, anyone who is speaking to this agenda item that's participating via Zoom or in council chambers, including the applicants, persons granted party status, staff, and persons wishing to provide public comment, to be sworn in. Persons in chambers should stand up, in chambers should stand up. And if you wish to provide public comment on the phone, you'll be sworn in when you speak on the phone. Pat, if you can swear them in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear, excuse me, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll begin now with presentation by staff.
Mr. Chair, on behalf of the city, Michael Fulwino, we would ask that the board accept Mark Perry as an expert on the matters which he's about to testify.
So moved, Jordan Behar.
Mary Lau, second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? All right. Let's continue. Staff?
Oh, he's disabled your video. They can't see.
Do you know they can hear themselves?
Was it read into the record? Oh, sorry. Was it read into the record? Was this case read into the record? I didn't hear it read into the record. Oh, okay. This is case FLD 2009-08026A. This is an amendment to a previously approved flexible development application. The proposal in front of you will provide for a 20-slip dock that will both be a commercial dock and a marina facility. And the difference between a commercial dock and a marina facility is that a commercial dock is accessory to a hotel or attached dwellings, in this case a hotel, and a marina facility has the ability to have the slips individually leased or rented out. There are no changes to the existing site or building outside of adding this dock facility. One point that I want to bring up is that the site was originally approved, and this is the overall site. There's two companion sites. Both of them are addressed as 309 Coronado. There's this one, which is 08026A, and a companion application, 08027A. They were both approved as two separate parcels, two separate projects. At some point, we're not sure when, it appears as though the property appraiser's office combined both parcels together into one parcel. One of the conditions of approval requires that the parcels be split back out, and there's a variety of reasons for that. I won't get into it with this application. In the next few months, you will see another set of amendments that will address that issue, but that is a condition of approval for this. Two other differences, just to point out, the overall project, both Parcel A and Parcel B were approved with 260 hotel units. They've been built with 255 units. The parking garage was approved with 302 parking spaces, and it has 299 spaces. Part of this submission includes a parking demand study. And the long and short of the parking demand study is that there's at least 174 spaces available at any given time. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer it.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have any questions of staff? Okay. There being none, then we'll proceed with presentation by the applicant. Okay. So do we have anybody in the from the applicant wanting to speak on 2009-8026A.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Katie Cole with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, 600 Cleveland Street, Suite 800, representing Key Clearwater and Key International with respect to these applications. As Mr. Perry stated and as articulated in the staff report, this request is specifically for a commercial marina and transient docks associated with an existing development. There were originally docks proposed and existing on the site. There has been subsequently changes to the site, and this application is to come back and very specifically add these docks. Mr. Perry, in his staff report, covers all of the beach by design criteria, so it may have been somewhat confusing that this is an existing hotel already, and the only addition that this request will modify the previous approval to include the docks. We have Terry Skapik with Woods Consulting, who is the dock consultant who prepared the dock portion of the application, and Hush Kahovi with Northside Engineering, who his firm worked with the site plan. Sean Gracie is the applicant's representative and is also joining remotely to answer any questions. So with that, items 1 and 2 on your agenda, as Mr. Perry said, they both incorporate the approvals for these docks, since there are 2 different parcels that were originally approved for this. Even though it's one parcel, there are 2 agenda items for the same common dock that will serve these 2 branded hotels. So with that, we agree with the staff report and the conditions of approval and the evidence submitted in the record, and are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Cole? Okay. I see that we don't have anybody on the phone, no calls in. So on this matter, is there any cross-examination by either the staff or the applicant?
None by the applicant.
None by staff.
Okay. Does anybody else from the board have any other questions on this matter? There being none and there being no calls online from what I'm being told, then we'll go ahead and close the public comment. And actually, let me ask for certain, is there anybody in chambers there that wanted to speak to this other than Ms. Cole? Doesn't appear as though. Okay. So let's go ahead and proceed then and close the public hearing portion of this and have discussion amongst the board. Does anybody have any questions or a motion?
I'm sorry, just for the record, I did want to indicate that the applicant and the professional consultants that supported the application appeared at the hearing. I said their names earlier, but just wanted to note that.
All right, thank you for noting that. All right, no cross-examination, no closing remarks. Do I have a motion on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve items 1 and 2 on today's agenda. Based on evidence in the record, including the application and the staff reports, they hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with the conditions of approval as listed.
Second, Jordan Behar.
Okay, motion made. Jay, I've got a question for you. When I read the case, I've only read the description for the first one. They are substantially similar, but I didn't read the case number for 8027A. Is that an issue? I just want to make sure procedure, we don't have a problem.
It's not an issue. If you wish to clear the record up, just to make sure, you can go ahead and read it now, just to make sure that it's encapsulated within the board's action, but it won't be an issue.
Okay, let me go ahead and read that now. We'll do that one motion the way it's made. So we heard on both cases, FLD 2009-08026A and FLD 2009-08027A, which is Parcel A and Parcel B, both at 309 Coronado Drive, with the owner applicant being Key Clearwater LLC. And the motion applies to both agenda items 1 and 2, so it's clear on the record. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on this, so we have the record clear. I'll begin. Vice Chairman Eskevich?
Yes.
Brian Barker?
Yes.
Jordan Behar?
Yes.
Mike Flannery?
Yes.
Mary Lau?
Yes.
John Quattrocki?
Yes.
And myself, Chair, yes. Motion passes unanimously. And that concludes agenda items 1 and 2 on today's agenda. Continuing on now with agenda item number 3. It is case FLD 2020-05015, 716 Bayway Boulevard, Unit 1, Slip 1. The owner applicant is David R. Phillips. The representative is Jake Jensen at Docs Inc. The location is the north side of Bayway Boulevard, approximately 150 feet east of the Parkway Drive. And we're reviewing a proposed boat lift in association with an existing multi-use dock greater than 500 square feet in area. Going back to our process here. Is there anyone, there was no one in the cases for party status. Can we have anyone here on behalf of the applicant and city who has not been sworn in so far be sworn in? Is there anybody in the gallery on this one?
The applicant is here, Mr. Chair. I don't know if we need to be sworn in.
If you haven't been sworn in yet, and I think staff's already been sworn in for the most part, so Pat?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth?
I do.
Thank you. And who said that?
This is Brian Ungst, and I'm joined by David Phillips, and also on the Zoom is Bruce Nesty with Docs Incorporated.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Continuing on then, presentations by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Michael Fawino, we would ask the board to accept Mark Perry as an expert on the matters he's about to testify to.
Move.
Chris, so move.
I'm sorry, who said that?
Chris Anaskevich.
Thank you.
Second, Brian Barker.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor say yes or aye.
Yes.
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 Any opposed? All right, we can proceed. Excuse me while I shuffle my papers.
This is an application to allow a boat slip with a 4.5 foot side setback, which is a reduction from the otherwise required 12 feet. Staff is recommending approval as noted in the staff report. The only conditions of approval just stipulate that the proposed dock and boat lift are for private use only. Fueling, boat repairs, public use prohibited. And that all required building permits are applied for. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer any of them.
All right, does anybody have any questions of staff on this matter? There being none, then we'll proceed with any presentation by the applicant. Mr. Ungst.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and board members. Thank you all very much for accommodating this meeting virtually. Really appreciate all the work that the staff and the board members have done to keep the development review process going forward in these unprecedented times. This is a very straightforward application. It's an existing dock and an existing residential boat slip. We're just seeking to add a boat lift to an existing residential boat slip. And under the code, adding the boat lift makes it a multi-use dock, which is subject to the commercial dock standards. Although it will, as Mr. Perry said, it will be for private use only of the current residents, no gassing or repairs or anything like that, and no access to the public. We also received an affidavit of non-objection from the neighboring Sandpipers Cove Condominium Association Incorporated, and also from the abutting unit owner, George Maisel. So both of the immediately impacted property owners are in favor of the application. With that, we'll answer any of the questions you have. And again, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Does anybody on the board have any questions of the applicant? Seeing none. Is there any cross-examination by staff?
None.
Any cross-examination by the applicant?
No, sir.
Are there anybody in the public either at chambers or live that needs to speak on this matter? And it would appear that we have no calls on this item either. That being the case, any closing remarks by either the applicant or staff?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll assume the same for staff. I didn't see him rushing up to the podium. That will close the public comments on this hearing and the public portion of the hearing. Any discussion amongst the board, or do I have a motion?
Chairman, I move to approve item number 3 on our agenda based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Brian Barker.
Seconded by Brian Barker. Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, then I will go ahead and do a roll call vote again. Vice Chairman Anaskevich,
Yes.
Brian Barker,
Yes.
Jordan Behar,
Yes.
Mike Flannery,
Yes.
Mary Lau,
Yes.
John Quattrocki,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. The motion passes unanimously, and that concludes case 05015.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for being here as well by virtual means. Continuing on now with case number 4 on our agenda. Case is FLD 2016-11037A / PLT 2020-07004 at 400 North Myrtle Avenue and 410, 711, 777 Maple Street. The applicant is the City of Clearwater, and representative is Neil Strelo, and is located in the southwest corner of Maple Street and North Myrtle Avenue. I'm reviewing a proposed amendment to approve a level 2 flexible development application. So on this matter here, Chris, is this the one that you have a?
Mr. Chairman, I have a conflict of interest on this proposal, on this case. I was the landscape architect on the project, so I will recuse myself from voting.
Okay, and you completed the necessary forms?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I also have a conflict on this one. Although I was not directly involved, my firm did the plat and the surveying work on this project.
Okay, so we have 2 of our 7 members. We still have enough quorum wise, I believe, so we're good to go on that. Okay. I'm seeing that we have a participant on that's muted right now under, oh, there we go. Now we have, instead of Samsung, we're seeing a person in the name, Edward Smith. Okay. Are you here on this matter, Mr. Smith? And you're muted.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we would ask the board to accept Mark Perry as an expert on the matters.
Yes, I'm the architect's representative for this.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Perry's been proposed as an expert by staff. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved. Jordan.
Second.
Who seconded that?
Mike Flannery.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Think we got enough votes there? Oh, motion passes. Is there anybody who has not been sworn in yet that is either in the on Zoom or in the gallery in the chambers?
Yes, Mr.
All right.
Chair.
Pat, if you could swear them in.
If you please raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth?
I do.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll begin with presentations by staff.
Hello again. This is an amendment to an existing approved flexible development application. This is for the Clearwater Gas Department. The only reason that this application would have to come back before the board is for the addition of 0.41 acres vacated East Avenue, which is, you can see at the bottom of the site plan. The other changes would otherwise have been handled as a minor amendment. The staff report does provide for a recommendation of approval. There are no outstanding conditions of approval, with the exception of further clarification of condition 7 of the original approval, and it provides additional, like I said, additional clarification as to the provision of up to 14, but no less than 12 wayfinding signs. And that was to get additional height as part of that original approval. So that would be the only kind of change to any existing conditions of approval. All the others are adopted. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have any questions for staff?
This is Mike Flannery. Yeah, just a short one. Could you sort of go over the yellow zone and explain what happens with the railroad track?
The railroad tracks stay. That yellow area was part of the East Avenue right-of-way. It wasn't really an actual used road, and it's been vacated. And typically with a right-of-way vacation, half of it goes to one adjoining property and the other half goes to the other adjoining property. So this vacation amounts to 0.41 acres. The railroad tracks are not affected. They're staying exactly where they are. But the right-of-way, the property will be absorbed by the greater Clearwater Gas Department property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff from the board? All right, proceeding on with presentation by the applicant.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Neil Strelo. I'm a senior planner with VHB. My address is 501 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 1010, Tampa, Florida, 33602. The last name is Stralow. As mentioned, other project teammates from Clearwater Gas, Long and Associates, and VHB are available in case additional information is required. The subject site is the Clearwater Gas Facility governmental use. The site was previously approved by the board in 2017 and then it's been redeveloped. This application represents the new conditions that were made during site construction and as noted in the staff report. It includes the addition of 0.41 acres along the CSX railroad line adjacent to the property. Mr. Flannery, your question, the existing railroad tracks remain and are protected by an easement as part of the plat. The application was reviewed by the city's Development Review Committee and plans revised that address staff comments incorporated within. The owner is acceptable to the proposed conditions of approval, specifically the revised condition number 7 on the funding of future wayfinding signs in the downtown planning area. We respectfully request your approval of the application as submitted. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant from the board? Does not appear so. Is there anyone in attendance at council chambers who would like to provide public comments? Or anybody else by Zoom? Do we have any calls on this one? Oh. Okay. Yeah, I thought that one went away, but I guess it just shifted around when they joined us before. So thanks for bringing that up again. Okay, so there's nobody in chambers, nobody on the phone on this matter. Are there any closing remarks by staff?
No.
Thank you. Any closing remarks by the applicant?
None by the applicant.
All right, then. That being the case, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter, and we'll proceed with discussion and vote by the board. Does anybody on the board have any questions or discussion, or shall we, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Mary Lau, I move to approve item number 4 on today's agenda, based on evidence in the record, including the application staff report, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Jordan Behar.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, begin with a roll call vote. Vice Chairman Eskevich.
No vote. I have a conflict on
Oh,
this.
I'm sorry, conflict there. Brian Barker.
No vote, conflict.
There you go. Just clear that up, sorry. Jordan Behar,
Yes.
Mike Flannery,
Yes.
Mary Lau,
Yes.
John Quattrocki,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the public hearing on this matter on the agenda. Moving on to agenda item number 5 next. Agenda item number 5 is FLD 2020-05013 at 696 South Gulfview Boulevard. The owner applicant is 696 South Gulfview Boulevard LLC. The representative is Brett Craftsman. The Craftsman and Associates. The property is located at the northwest corner of South Gulfview Boulevard and Parkway Drive. And we're reviewing a proposed 3,456 square foot restaurant in the tourist zoning district. On this matter, is there anybody on in chambers or on staff or has not been sworn in yet for this matter or on Zoom?
The applicant.
The applicant is here, has to be sworn in. Anybody in chambers on this matter? Okay, then Pat, if you can swear in the applicant.
And would you please raise your right hands? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and begin then with presentation by staff. Mr.
Thank you. And again, Mr. Board, we would ask Mr. Chair, we would ask the board to accept Mark Perry as an expert on the matters he's about to testify to.
All right.
So moved, Jordan Behar.
Second, Chris Anaskevich.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, he's accepted as an expert. Staff can continue with their presentation.
Hi. This application is, the primary aspect of this application is a reduction in parking. This is an existing building. There's no real changes to the building except for exterior upgrades. Parking is located on the site, but all of it is non-conforming for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that all of it backs out into public right-of-way. The applicant is proposing to turn what was a retail sales and service into a restaurant and remove all the existing parking and convert that to outdoor dining. The applicant has submitted a parking demand study that shows that there's adequate parking in the area, especially with the existing publicly accessible parking garages farther to the north. Staff is recommending approval, and that's highlighted in the staff report. The only condition of note does require a little bit more work with staff to refine the landscape plan a bit more. We've spoken with the applicant about that, and they're agreeable to it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions of staff on this matter? There being none, then we'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Hello, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Brett Krasman from Krasman and Associates. Basically, Mark summed it up pretty well. It's an existing 3,456 square foot building that was the Subway and a convenience store. We're going to convert it to a restaurant. We're going to get rid of all the non-conforming parking. We're going to outline the site with a 5-foot heavily planted landscape buffer. We're going to work with staff for some interior plantings, but some of those may be in pots so they can be moved to provide shade throughout the day. And Other than that, I've got the owner here, who's also going to be the chef at this restaurant. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Does anybody from the board have any questions of the applicant? Okay. Boards may provide any written comments that were submitted prior to yesterday. Is there anyone in attendance in council chambers that would like to provide public comments? Is there anybody else on Zoom for public comments? And there are no callers from this item from what I'm being told. So that being the case, are there any closing remarks by staff?
No.
Any closing remarks by the applicant? Do you all have any other additional comments? Okay, very good. Then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter and for deliberation and vote. Is there any discussion, or does anybody on the board have a motion for this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I move to approve case number FLD 2020-05013 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
Mary Lau seconds.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion by the board? There being none, I'll go ahead and proceed with the roll call vote. Vice Chairman Askevich?
Yes.
Brian Barker?
Yes.
Jordan Behar?
Yes.
Mike Flannery?
Yes.
Mary Lau?
Yes.
John Quattrocchi?
Yes.
And myself, I vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the public hearing and matter of 05013. And we'll move on to the next item in our agenda for today. Next item is case number 6. It is FLD 2020-04010 at 327 David Avenue. The owner is the city of Clearwater. Applicant is Creative Contractors and representative is Robert Pergolese of Gulf Coast Consulting. Location is on the east side of David Avenue, approximately 425 feet north of the intersection with Gulf to Bay Boulevard. And we're considering a proposal for a 14,262 square foot office project. The proposed floor area ratio as stated in the agenda today.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from case number 6 as my firm's been engaged to provide design services for this project.
Okay. And you'll complete the necessary forms for the clerk?
I will.
Okay, very good. All right, noted. Hopefully I don't forget this time, but if I call you for the vote, you can just remind me. That being said, let's go ahead and continue on. There's nobody for party status. I will ask this time that anyone wishing to speak on agenda item by Zoom or in council chambers, stand up to be sworn in. And if there's anybody on, do we have anybody on Zoom? Okay, very good. So those who need to be sworn in, please stand and raise your right hand. I see a few folks in there. Pat, if you can go ahead.
All right. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
We could hardly hear. There you go.
Thank you.
I saw Pat put her hand up to her ear and I couldn't hear anything either. So I guess we got that covered. Thank you very much. All right, let's go ahead and begin with presentation by staff.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I renew request. We would ask that the board accept Vinod Kanun as an expert on the matters he's about to testify to.
All right. Do I have a motion?
On Quattrocchi, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Mary Lau seconds.
All right, motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Yes.
All opposed? There being none, he's approved as an expert. And when you all are ready, you can proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone. The case before Community Development Board is FLD 04010 at 327 David Avenue. The site is located east of 19, approximately 425 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard on David Avenue, and is sandwiched between David Avenue on west and Elizabeth Avenue on east. The site is roughly 5.67 acres and is zoned as US 19. Future land use is US 19 regional center. The site is roughly 5.67 acres in area and is owned by City of Clearwater and has an operational raw water wellhead on the site. The applicant Creative Contractors is proposing office use, approximately 14,262 square feet in area, 19.5 feet in height, and has 45 spaces, car parking spaces, off-street parking spaces on site. The staff recommends approval. Approximately 20 conditions of approval are there. Worth mentioning are that the trees need to be outside the 15 feet easement, and the city needs to have access easement to the raw water wellhead for operation and maintenance. These are some of the perspectives for the office building. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions of staff on this matter? Seeing none, then we'll proceed and have the applicant present.
Good afternoon. I'm Ed Armstrong. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Hillward Henderson, located at 600 Cleveland Street, Suite 800, here in Clearwater. I represent the applicant. Also here with me today is Alan Baumstein, the president of Creative Contractors, and the other consultants who've worked on the project. An approval today will allow us to effectuate and finalize the land swap between the property owner, Mr. Creative Contractors property, and the city property, subject to the application. We're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions of the applicant? There being none, I don't know if we have any other written comments. Is there anyone in attendance in council chambers like to provide public comments? Is there anybody by Zoom that would like to provide public comments? And looks like nobody appearing by phone on this matter. So I think that will close. Any closing remarks by staff?
No, thanks.
Any closing remarks by the applicant?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. That being the case, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter and proceed with the board deliberation and vote. Does anybody have any questions from the board, or is there any motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case FLD 2020-04010 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
Second, Parker.
We got a second motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then let's go ahead and proceed with the roll call vote. Vice Chairman Anaskevich.
Yes.
Brian Barker.
Yes.
Jordan's conflicted out, so we'll skip over him. Mike Flannery.
Yes.
Mary Lau.
Yes.
John Quattrocchi.
Yes.
And myself as chair, yes. Motion passes unanimously, and that will conclude this item on the agenda. Thank you all for being here. Next item on the agenda is case number FLD 2020-05011 at 1176 Mandalay Point Road. The applicant is Arnold F. Bellini and Lauren Bellini. Representative is Jeff Smith with David Buse Design Group. The location is on the east side of Mandalay Point Road, approximately 200 feet north of El Dorado Avenue, and his request for proposed detached dwelling in a residential infill project seaward of the coastal construction line. This time, anyone wishing to speak to this agenda item that is participating via Zoom or in council chambers, including the applicants or anybody else, I'd like to be sworn in. Is there anybody in chambers or by Zoom for this matter? I see somebody in chambers. Anybody by Zoom? Doesn't look like it. Pat, if you can swear them in.
Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's proceed then with the staff presentation on this matter.
Mr. Chair, we would ask that the board accept Ella Candrell as an expert on the matter she's about to testify to.
This is Chris, so move.
Very loud, seconds.
Motion made and seconded. There being any discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye, yes.
Aye.
All opposed? There being none, motion passed unanimously.
Good afternoon, Ellen Crandall, Planning and Development. The application before you today is for the construction of a new detached dwelling, requesting a reduction in setback from the coastal construction control line. This aerial from the city's GIS, it shows the approximate location of the CCCL in red in relation to the prior structure, which has since been demolished. This shows it on their proposed site plan. The project area has 2 zoning and 2 future land use designations, which previously did not align. The property is the subject of an administrative adjustment, which was recently approved by Ford Pinellas and the Board of County Commissioners, and the districts do now align. The proposed development will be located entirely within the low density residential zoning district and the residential low future land use, which is shown in red. No construction is proposed in the open space and recreation and preservation, which is shown in green. The detached dwelling has a proposed height of 30 feet measured from base flood elevation. The Planning and Development Department is recommending approval with 10 conditions of approval, including one that specifies that documentation of state approval for any construction seaward of the CCCL is provided prior to issuance of a building construction permit. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good. Does anybody have any questions from the board? There being none.
Just real quick question.
Go ahead, George.
I know that the flood maps are proposed to be changed and adopted sometime next year. Is there anything significant? I'm not familiar with what's exactly happening up there. Anything significantly different with the CCCL in the proposed map changes, or is it roughly in the same spot?
I am not aware of the changes or the details of them. I couldn't really speak to it. We base it on what the current location is.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board? There being none, a presentation from the applicant.
Hi, board. My name is Jeff Smith with Davis Fuse Design Group, SMITH, spelling my last name. We're located at 150 State Street East, Oldsmar, Florida. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think Ella did a great job of presenting our case here. I'd be happy to answer any questions, like I said. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Smith? Okay. There being none, the board has not been provided any comments that we were aware of that came in before 5 o'clock yesterday. Is there anyone in attendance in council chambers that would like to provide public comments? Anybody by Zoom? And looks like we have no calls on this item either. Gee, it would be nice to have one call in so we can see how that works. But anyways, even if it was a positive call, yeah. Anyways, that being said, that will close, then any closing remarks then by either staff or the applicant?
Closing remarks.
Okay. I'm going to assume nothing from the applicant either. And then we'll proceed to go ahead and close the public hearing portion and continue on with deliberation and vote by the board. Does anybody have any discussion that they'd like to partake in, or do we have a motion? Okay, motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve case number FLD 2020-05011 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed. And that was Chris Anaskevich.
Mary Lau seconds.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Vice Chairman Anaskevich?
Yes.
Brian Barker?
Yes.
Jordan Behar?
Yes.
Mike Flannery?
Yes.
Mary Lau?
Yes.
John Quattrocki?
Yes.
And Chair Butkus, yes. Motion passes unanimously, and that will conclude this item on our agenda for today. One more item to go. Let me get this stuff off my desk. So our next item is an appeal. It's agenda, well, under appeals, item 1, it's case number APP 2020-00001, 849 Bruce Avenue. The owner applicant is Emily and David Haas, if I hopefully say that name correctly. Representative is Catherine Cole, Hill Ward Henderson. Location is located on the east side of Bruce Avenue in the corner and intersection with Gardenia Street. And they are proposing a pool deck as a principal structure of a single family home in the low medium density residential zoning district. Do we have anybody speaking to the agenda item in Zoom or council chambers that needs to be sworn? I see a few people standing, so we have some people to be sworn there. Pardon me?
There's people on the phone call too? Are there people who called in?
There's people on the phone that need to be sworn in also.
Okay, we'll do those. I believe we do those one by one as they speak on the phone.
Correct.
The folks on the phone are calling in from public comment, correct? Because that's the only ones. Okay, so we'll address them and swear them in as they speak. But we have anybody else that's present needs to be sworn now.
Yes.
Okay, Pat, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's begin with presentations by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Fuino, Assistant City Attorney. We would ask the board to accept Vinod Kanu as an expert in the matters he's about to testify to.
Okay. Have a motion?
So moved, Jordan Behar.
Do I have a second?
Chris Anaskevich, second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye or yes. Aye.
Yes.
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 Okay, any opposed? Very good. Let's go ahead and then continue with the staff presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. The case before the Community Development Board today is an appeal APP 2020-00001 at 849 Bruce Avenue. The subject property is located at the intersection of Bruce Avenue and Gardenia Street in the North Clearwater Beach area. The blue properties are the evidence properties which were submitted by the applicant. The case is an appeal of a denied of level 1 FLS application FLS 2020-06023 to reduce front setback up to 5 feet on the Gardenia Street side. The subject case is for an in-ground swimming pool as a primary structure at 13 inches height from the existing grade. As per CDC section 4-504 Community Development Board appeals, in order to grant an appeal, the applicant has to meet each and every criteria. Criteria 1, the decision appeal from misconstrued or incorrectly interpreted the provisions of Community Development Code. Criteria number 2, the decision of the Community Development Board will be in harmony with the intent and purpose of Community Development Code. Criteria number 3, the decision of the Community Development Board will not be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare. As per the applicant, in its appeal application, it stated that the staff, the review staff misconstrued or incorrectly interpreted 2 aspects of the code, specifically the terminology triple frontage lots and immediate vicinity. With regards to triple frontage lots, the applicant compared the corner lot to corner double frontage lot, which is a distinct distinction in the code. They are not comparable and they have different characteristics. But typically, corner double frontage lots are called as triple frontage lots. Secondly, for immediate vicinity, there is no codified definition in the code. And in the absence of a codified definition, common dictionary definition or meaning can be used. And in this case, vicinity means area which is area or near surrounding a particular place. And immediate vicinity means the area nearest to the site. So pursuant to CDC section 2-203, the proposed setback reduction for a pool needs to meet the following flexibility criteria for residential infill projects. Criteria number 6, how the proposed project will upgrade the immediate vicinity of the parcel proposed for development. For this, the applicant did not provide any evidence to show how the proposed pool will upgrade the immediate vicinity. Criteria number 7, how the project creates a form and function which enhances the community character of immediate vicinity. For this, when the staff reviewed, the project alters the character of immediate vicinity, and furthermore, no evidence was provided which tells us that it enhances the community character. For criteria number 8, the flexibility with regards to front setbacks are justified by the benefits to the community character and the immediate vicinity of the parcel. So the requested flexibility is inconsistent with the prevailing development patterns. And furthermore, no identifiable benefits to the community character were found. As per CDC section 3-914A for level 1 applications, the following criteria needs to be met from the general intent and purpose of Community Development Code. Criteria number 1, how the proposed development actually will be in harmony with the character of adjacent property. And the staff review found that the established development pattern of reduced 5 feet front setback does not exist, and no evidence was provided as to how the primary structure on adjacent properties is within 5 feet. Criteria number 5, that how this proposed development is consistent with the community character of immediate vicinity. The proposed pool will alter the character of the immediate vicinity, and furthermore, no evidence was provided that how 5 feet front setback is consistent within the community. The staff also analyzed the submitted evidence by the applicant. The blue shaded properties are evidence submitted by the applicant, and the staff found that there is no pattern of 5 feet reduced setback within these properties. Prevailing pattern of development is minimum 10 feet front setback from the primary structure. And secondly, there has been no change in development since the last denial in 2003. Furthermore, when the staff reviewed the submitted evidence, the staff found inaccuracies in the evidence submitted because the evidence submitted was from GIS maps. For example, in 55 Gardenia Street, the applicant evidence states that it is approximately 5.5 feet from front setback on the north side of Gardenia Avenue, whereas the staff research found that the setback is roughly around 10 feet from the property line, which is based on the surveys submitted for building construction permits. And surveys are typically more accurate than GIS maps. Similarly, for 849 Mandalay, the applicant's evidence stated approximately 6.8 feet setback from the north property line, whereas the staff research found that the setback is roughly 10.75 feet from the north. Pursuant to CDC section 1-103, which is the general intent and purpose of CDC, it states that the purpose of the code is to provide for open spaces through efficient project design and layout between buildings on the project site and adjoining properties, and which includes public rights of way. Similarly, CDC section 1-103 E8 establishes zoning districts that reflect the existing and desirable characteristics of a particular area within the city. With this findings of fact, the staff recommends a denial for APP 2020-00001, as the department did not misconstrue or incorrectly interpret the provisions of Community Development Code, and the appeal will not be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this Community Development Code. If the board has any questions, the staff will be happy to answer. Thank you.
This is Jordan Behr. I have one quick question. I noticed it looks like there's multiple references to the setbacks to pool and code related to pool, and then there's also discussion of setbacks and relationship to primary structure.
Yes.
The pool is 13 inches up, so I believe it's being considered primary structure and not a pool.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff? Mary, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
I'll learn this eventually. My question is, currently on the Gardenia side of the house where the pool is going to be, in the outer edge by the sidewalk, there is a decorative metal fence and a tall hedge. If I correctly understand the landscape sketch, that's expected to remain in place, correct?
Actually, the existing conditions right now, I think it's in the right of way. So I think the property line is roughly 10 to 15 feet from that line. But as per their sketch, yes, it will be there as a part of the design. In addition, there will be site visibility triangle requirement for 20 feet by 20 feet at the intersection of Gardenia and Bruce, and where their driveway for the garage actually meets the Gardenia Street.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Mike?
Sure.
Yes, if this pool was flat, wasn't 13 inches higher, which is required by code and whatever, so we can drain, would have been okay.
Pools less than 12 inches are considered as accessory structures, and accessory structures are not allowed, are not permitted between the right of way and the primary structure. So they need to be at the rear of the primary structure. But since they are requesting a flexibility, since they are giving this proposal for a pool which is 13 inches, which is higher than 12 inches, it will be a part of primary structure.
So it's an inch high?
Yes. Sorry, it's an inch high, right? Did you ask?
It's 1 inch too high.
Yes.
So if they could build it at 12 inches, that'd be okay, 11 inches.
Just to, excuse me, this is Ellen Crandall here. Just to clarify, a pool In the ad for this case, it references the accessory structure code section H. If a pool and deck is 12 inches or less, it is an accessory structure which is not permitted between the house and a public right-of-way. If it is greater than 12 inches, it will be considered a primary structure. So the basis of the FLS is that it's 13 inches in height, therefore it is a primary structure. Does that explain it?
Yeah, I guess I'll ask the applicant too if we get a chance. But what determines the 13 inches? Is it the gutter, top of the gutter of the pool? Or is it, I mean, if it's a design issue, could they have a no gutter pool and have it the 12 inches and then not have a problem?
I think why the height is that height is a question for the applicant. I agree. If the pool was 12 inches or less, it would be prohibited in this location.
You said even 12 inches or less, even 2 inches, it still would be prohibited?
Per the accessory structure code, 12 inches or less is accessory structure and is prohibited in the front. Greater than 12 inches shall be considered a primary structure. So there's a very big nuance here. Is it a primary structure versus an accessory structure? The FLS reviewed it as a primary structure, as was the request.
Could they have changed their request to the secondaries? I'm just wondering if it's this 12-inch thing, if it was on the, say, a property that had a backyard or was not on a corner, could they have just reduced it by a couple of inches and then been okay?
I think detailed in the development order and the staff report, the site was developed under a prior FLS with some reduced setbacks, but also with a house located with the minimum 5-foot setbacks on the sides. This is a corner property, has 2 fronts and 2 sides. The sides each have a 5-foot setback. That does not allow for any room for an accessory structure in the side yard. And the accessory structure code prohibits accessory structures in the front yard. That is kind of the fundamental design challenge of this property.
So let me try, boards go with me for a second here. If this was in a line of houses and was not a corner property and there was another property on the other side of it, could it have been approved if it was less than 12 inches high? Does that make sense? If it was on a string of houses, a middle lot instead of a corner lot, and the pool was 12 inches high instead of 13, could it have been approved?
If it was 12 inches high, it would be an accessory structure. If it was an accessory structure in a front yard, it would be prohibited by the accessory structure code.
But if it was on a side yard and there's another property right next to it, so it made it a side yard instead of a corner, then, and it was 11 inches high instead of 13, would it have been approved?
If we're talking a hypothetical pool in a side yard that's less than 12 inches high would be reviewed as an accessory structure. And if it met the setbacks, it could be reviewed at a building permit level. If it met setbacks.
And would it have probably passed or not passed any building permit level? I know it's not your area, probably.
Well, I'm always a little hesitant to give an absolute answer to a hypothetical. If we had a hypothetical pool in a hypothetical side yard that met the setbacks, there would be no basis to not approve it. I think the fundamental thing here is that this is a pool that is greater than 12 inches. Therefore, it is a primary structure. The requested setback is a 5-foot front setback. There's not a pattern of 5-foot front setbacks.
Oh, okay, so I'll just do it for one more where I can make myself. I was involved in approving swimming pools for many years with the health department. So and I know there's different designs, and essentially sometimes the design is such, what causes it to be 12 inches high? What if they raised the whole yard by 12 inches and then made it flat? Or the engineering around it so it didn't meet that 13 inches instead of 11 inches. First of all, that's one issue. And the second is when a corner house, it's going to be almost like a side of a yard instead of a corner house because they're getting zinged because they're on the corner. They can't do much with the property. So I'm just trying to balance this down so I can understand it. Okay, well, maybe we can ask the applicants about that.
I think the planning director had a comment. She was holding her up. Gia?
If I could, thank you very much. I think the issue here, Mr. Flannery, is that if it were at grade, no matter where it was 12 inches, no matter how we measured it, the pool would not be allowed in this location. It has to be behind the front building line of the house. When this house was originally constructed back in 2003 or 4 and got flexibility for the front setback along Gardenia to be reduced down to 15 feet, that application included a pool in this general location as well, which was not approved as part of that application because of the reduction in setback. So now years later, a different owner is coming forward wanting a pool in this location where we found there was not an established pattern within this the immediate vicinity of this property to support that reduction. Because they're proposing a pool that's 13 inches, we have to treat it as if it were part of the house. And I think that's the difference. If we looked at it as a flat pool at grade 12 inches or less, it would have to be behind that front building line. And this house was designed and constructed with no space for a pool.
And that house was only built, it looked older to me, by the way, although it was raised up. It seemed to have been raised, but it looked like a much older house to me. So it was built in 2000, after 2000. And you already have reviewed it for a pool and said at that time you couldn't do it.
Correct.
Do
Okay.
we have any other questions for anyone on staff? Okay. There being none, before Ms. Cole speaks, I just wanted to point out, I didn't go through the procedures for a hearing, even though we switched from level 2 to an appeal, because the procedures are the same except for there's no party status in an appeal. So just so the record's clear, the procedures are the same as our level 2 cases. And there was nobody asking for party status on any of the matters anyway, so everything's the same. So I didn't go through that process. And I just want to make sure the record was clear. Ms. Cole, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. Katie Cole, law firm of Hillward Henderson, 600 Cleveland Street, Suite 800, Clearwater, Florida, representing Mr. and Mrs. David House, who are here with us this afternoon. I'm also here with my colleague, Jamie Meyer from our law firm, who has been instrumental in preparing both the application, doing the research on the evidence and the appeal. I think that Mr. Flannery got right to the point. This is because it's a corner lot. If this property were not on the corner, we would not be here before you. A pool could have been constructed at grade without any relief. And as evidenced by the fact that the house was already approved with 5-foot side setbacks, a raised pool could have arguably been approved at a 5-foot setback. So the only basis for denial that the city articulated in its letter of denial is because this is a corner lot. And so that is the reason we're here today. Just as a matter of business, I would like to incorporate the record, including the response to comments that the applicant made into the Acela system. I don't know if you all received that full record. When you do, I also want to be sure we provided a book for each of you that incorporates the evidence and a copy of our appeal application that you all have that. So Mr. Chair, just as a matter of point of business, if there's no objection, wanted to confirm those things were incorporated into the record. I think that we do have a PowerPoint, and so I think Ms. Crandall can facilitate that for us as we go through. And going to the point of the appeal, I'm kind of straddling a line here because to Mr. Flannery's point, I'd like to go through some of the original application details and be sure that you understand what the request was, but also want to be cognizant that we are appealing and want to be sure that we convey to you how the staff misconstrued and misapplied the code and failed to base this decision on competent substantial evidence. If you go to slide 2, we'd like to step back and explain what this application is. It's the addition of a pool, and they've desired to have a pool ever since 2013. While the staff opined that upon construction of the house, a pool was denied, that's not in fact actually correct. The building permit included reference to a pool, but after discussion, the builder removed that request, understanding that at the time it needed to be a principal structure because of the city's limitations of accessory structures in a front setback. And so in fact, the pool wasn't denied, it was simply removed from the request, and the request moved forward without the pool. Subsequent to that, the Haases, after they purchased the house, did negotiate and talk to staff in the prior administration about what a pool could be, and learned that if the pool was treated as a primary structure, meaning 13 inches, 12 inches or above 12 inches as defined in the code, that a pool could be incorporated into the structure of the house and into the yard. And that's the application that is before you now. Gardenia Street is buffered by landscaping. As you can see in the landscape plan, there's continued to be landscaping proposed. There's some reorganization of that landscaping to provide for site visibility triangles that don't currently exist. While it is considered a frontage, it's a secondary and less traffic street than Bruce Avenue. And in fact, the application removes the primary driveway from Bruce and moves it on to Gardenia, which is a preferred access for secondary accesses. Next slide, please. It's common throughout the Clearwater Beach to have a pool on a small lot, as you can see from the aerials that were provided in the application and the copy of the appeal. But I think most importantly is that in the application and together with the response to comment, the Haases did provide competent substantial evidence of the applicability with the CDC criteria. It's not that the city can't just ignore the evidence or decide the evidence wasn't what they wanted to see. The city has the burden of presenting alternative evidence that this does not meet competent substantial evidence. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the home that was built and showing the Bruce Avenue frontage where these pavers would be removed and relocated to the side. Shows the intersection of Bruce and Gardenia and shows the existing hedge where you can see behind the hedge is where the pool would be constructed. You can see the sidewalk along Gardenia. Ironically, because this is the newest house on this intersection, the Haases home is the only one with a sidewalk along Gardenia Street. Next slide. Here's an aerial, and you can see the sole sidewalk there, and you can see where the pool would be located on the side of the home there. Next slide. This is a proposed site plan that was submitted with the application showing where the pool location is. And I believe Ms. Clayton said that there was 15 feet setback on Gardenia, but as you can see from this survey and in the site plan, it's actually 20 feet, 5 feet on the two sides. So this is a good example of showing the predicament that is in. When you have a corner lot, you're considered two frontages. And so the code would define that intersection as having 25-foot setbacks along both Bruce Avenue and Gardenia. When the home was constructed, the applicant requested a 20-foot setback along Gardenia, and there are 5-foot setbacks on both sides. So the home is situated in the back corner, eliminating the opportunity to put any type of accessory or other recreational space except for in this Gardenia area. If you can go back one slide, please, you can see that behind the shrubs, well, you can't really see it from here, there is already a seating area, and this is the area that the family uses as their recreational area, which is to be expected on corner lots, that the portion of the property along a secondary street would be used. You can skip forward 2 slides, please. The basis of the appeal in issuing the development order, the planning department did misconstrue and misinterpret the CDC and failed to base its decision on competent substantial evidence. As you all know, and you hear me say often, that if the applicant provides competent substantial evidence, there has to be some sort of alternative evidence or it should be approved. If we move forward, please, to the next slide. We wanted to articulate why we believe that, and why we believe you should determine that the staff misconstrued the code. I think the first thing is the erroneous reliance on prior applications for same and other properties. It's always a difficult balance because on one hand, the code requires compatibility, but on the other hand, the law requires each application to stand on its own. And obviously, if the applicant can't present specific examples of exact facts if it's standing on its own, but yet the intention is to look holistically at the character of the community and what the community may present. Furthermore, the code specifically allows an applicant to present the exact same request over and over again every year and asks that the board look at each one independently. So the reliance on prior applications is misconstrued. Further, the distinction of the triple front lot versus a double front lot. The staff argues in the staff report that a 3 frontage corner lot is more commonly known as a triple frontage and therefore has different benefits than a corner lot. And while the code talks about double frontages and triple frontages in corner lots, the code doesn't make any distinction as to allowing certain improvements on a triple lot versus a double lot. It simply says that these are the definitions. And if there is a corner lot, there are these 2 frontages that are known. The code itself does not require these definitions to be so rigid. It's written a way that reflects the notion of community character and a pattern of development, not a planned development. As we all know, North Clearwater Beach is an eclectic and unique neighborhood. There are many side streets that have development on them. They are small lots with rather large homes that have significant value, and homes with significant value demand additional amenities such as pools, fire pits, porches, and that's what the Hawes are looking for. I think the biggest thing that we take offense to is the definition of immediate vicinity. And Vinod spoke in his staff report of the common definition of immediate vicinity meaning specifically nearby and almost adjacent. However, the code reaches out and has another criteria that talks about adjacent property. Why would the code use in 2 criteria the words immediate vicinity and in 1 criteria the word adjacent if they were intended to mean the same thing? That simply can't be the case. In your package on Exhibit D is a copy of the plat. And I think we all know, as a resident of North Clearwater Beach for 10 years of my adult life as well, North Clearwater Beach is its own community. We did not reach into Carlowell for examples. We didn't reach into Mandalay Point for examples. And the applicant didn't even present examples from South Clearwater Beach. It simply looked at the North Clearwater Beach area from the Acacia Circle to the Carlowell line, and even more importantly, presented examples within just a few blocks. One thing we agree with staff on is the pattern of development has not changed since the house is built. Maxed out small lots, beach vacation homes, pools, uses of front yards as a functional backyard is all something that happens. In your next slide. The city, in fact, tries to state that the applicant did not provide evidence when in fact it simply ignored the evidence that was provided or disagreed with it without providing alternative evidence. We're not required. Oh, I'm sorry, there's not a timer up here. It's with me. Oh, sorry, I'm used to watching here. Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I have a couple more minutes? And I also have the homeowner who would like to speak 2 minutes. If we could have no more than 4 more minutes.
Well, I'll
I
give 4
apologize, I
minutes,
didn't
but
have a time here.
yeah, I didn't know where the time was either to know for certain. I just saw a message that came up a few moments ago. So I'll give 4 minutes, but also will give staff additional time because of that, since they didn't have the opportunity.
Absolutely, thank you. Moving to the next slide. The original application should have been approved originally because it was specifically provided for the primary structure in the front yard consistent with the community. The single family homes, it upgrades the immediate vicinity. The staff states that there was no specific evidence of upgrades of vicinity, but if every pool application required an appraisal to come in, that would create a huge burden on both the homeowners and the staff when it's commonly known that pools increase the value of the home. With that, I would like to invite Mr. Hawes up so he can speak, and then I will briefly conclude. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Development Board. Thank you for your time today. My name is David Haas, H-A-A-S-E, and my wife, Emily. We've been proud homeowners of 849 Bruce now for 7 years. And we have 2 kids locally that go to St. Cecilia's School. And I wanted to start with a thank you. This is you can see a complicated issue, and but obviously we feel very confident that we've come to a good conclusion, and hopefully you feel the same. We've spent a lot of time on this and a lot of effort, a lot of money. It's been an ongoing process here now for a few years, a lot of back and forth with the city and with the planners. We've also connected with, I feel, the immediate vicinity, the community, over 50 households we've talked to personally. You'll see it in our submittal. We've spent a lot of time getting signatures and talking to them about the investment that we want to make in our property. In addition to that, we've also, and you will hear from the community, I believe we have some community members on, some experts in their field. I view them as experts, both in real estate, from the Clearwater Beach Association, as well as from another realtor and property manager in the local area, all in support of this endeavor. So I can only say thank you for reviewing our case and looking at it with an open mind. Obviously, we feel very confident in our legal position here, and want to say thank you for your time.
Moving forward, thank you to the Haases. Clearly, there are examples of compatibility with the community, as evidenced by the voluminous letters of support in your packet and the continuation of those emails that came in yesterday. The evidence we provided in the original application of examples of pools in the North Clearwater Beach area, and more importantly, examples of primary structures with reduced setbacks, and that's really what this is about. And so in summary, it is within the community character. The original application is not contrary to the code. It meets the criteria, and the department had no legitimate reasons for denial and misconstrued the code when doing so. And with that, we appreciate it and are happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anybody from the board have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
We got 2 people who speak at the same time. Mary, I'm going to have you go first, and then we'll go to Chris.
All right. If I'm understanding, this is related to the question I asked staff earlier. If the fence and the hedge along Gardenia Avenue remain in place, if this project is installed, to my way of thinking, you can't really see what's behind the hedge, so that the only real change in the appearance of the property would be the removal of the Bruce Avenue pavers and installation of landscaping. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. I have a question, just kind of want you to expand a little on your interpretation of the Snyder case that you cited in your materials. If I recall, that case was a Florida Supreme Court decision involving the denial of a rezoning application for a half-acre parcel of land. It worked its way up through the court system, got to the Florida Supreme Court, and ultimately the court decided that the denial of the rezoning application was within the county's purview and that it should be upheld. And the gist that I get from that decision, and I do think it's applicable to a development application like this case, not just a rezoning case, but it seems to me that the way I look at that case, it seems like what the court was saying is that if, as seems to be the case here, the 5-foot setback request is paramount in the city's assessment and evaluation of this application. And if that's something that is not, doesn't render the decision, to use the language in the case, arbitrary, discriminatory, or unreasonable, the city should have the ability to manage the pattern and progress of development so long as it's consistent with the code. Can you expand on your interpretation and explain if I'm reading this wrong?
Sure. I think that in my opinion, and I'll defer to Mr. Foigno and Mr. Daniel, but Snyder defines quasi-judicial hearings and how they work. And you hear me regularly stand before you and say that the applicant has presented competent substantial evidence. And if there is no contrary competent substantial evidence, that the application should be approved. And that's the situation we have here, is the applicant presented competent substantial evidence that it meets each of the criteria. The city's response in its denial letter was not that there was alternative evidence or competing evidence that they thought. They simply stated that they disagreed or ignored the applicant's evidence. And that's not sufficient under the law. If there is evidence presented, in order to deny, there needs to be alternative evidence to be considered to support the denial. You can't just ignore the evidence that was presented. Does that answer your question, Ms. Lau?
Well, I guess to put a little finer point on it, if the materials provided by staff and the expert testimony at the hearing today indicates that there have been no other 5-foot setback approvals in this kind of area approved, regardless of whether you're looking at the 4 houses next to this house or the entire North Beach area that you looked at. It seems to me if that has been consistently applied, isn't that competent substantial evidence that the board can consider?
Respectfully, not necessarily. This is an appeal, and so it's an appeal based on the denial letter in the development order. And in the development order, the staff stated that it simply didn't meet the criteria in the code and wasn't compatible. They didn't provide any evidence or findings of fact in that denial as to why it didn't. It didn't state that it disagreed with the applicant's evidence. It didn't state that the applicant's evidence was incorrect. The evidence today saying that they've never found a 5-foot setback, I don't know that that's 100% correct. We provided a list of homes based on aerials that show a variety of pools. I myself have been involved in several applications on Clearwater Beach where we've had garages that are 0-foot front setbacks. And so I know for a fact there are on North Clearwater Beach several homes that have primary structures that are located within 5 to 10 feet of the front setback. So the appeal, the basis of appeal is the letter of denial, and the fact that the city did not provide any evidence in its denial that was contrary to the evidence provided in the application. It simply disagreed with the applicant's evidence.
Yeah, I might at some appropriate point ask Mr. Daniel to comment on whether, because the appellate process in the code requires us to consider, to conduct a quasi-judicial hearing such as we're doing, if that affects what the board's allowed to consider in deciding what is the record on appeal. Thank you.
Quick question, Ms.
Jordan,
Cole.
before you go, Chris
Sure.
had some comments. And
Oh,
I'll
yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, I just had a question on the landscape and this idea of enhancing the community character. There are some nice palm trees, some royal palms on the property and along the side of the home there, which again is sort of the front of the home. It looks like that would be removed and the pool would be installed. I do see that based on the site plan I'm looking at, there's some adonidia palms that would be repurposed, but I'm thinking a lot of that landscape would be removed, perhaps relocated, but I don't see that. The other thing I do notice with the existing condition is we do have a tall hedge that goes around the property, so that sort of screens the yard. I see there's a proposed hedge. However, the proposed hedge would be 30 inches tall. So in other words, we would see from the street a pool. And that sort of gets to my concern about enhancing the community character and patterns we're seeing elsewhere. I can't think of any other home where I see a pool from the street. And we're not going to be able to screen that unless the pool is somehow moved in this site plan further down and we can screen around that. But because of the site triangles, I don't think that could be permitted, but perhaps you could comment on that.
Certainly. So the indication that the hedges would be trimmed and maintained to less than 30 inches is only within the site triangle, and that's a requirement of the city code. Arguably, they should already be trimmed and maintained at 30 inches, but have grown higher than that as many residential homes have higher hedges. As a result of this application, the city has indicated that it would be required to be trimmed down to 30 inches within the site visibility triangle. The same for the palms that were within those triangles. The city mandated that those be removed and relocated. As you are probably aware, pools require screening for safety purposes consistent with the building code. And so there needs to be some level of fencing or screening 48 inches. There's not a specific fence plan shown or gate plan shown on this because it honestly depends on what type of landscaping and safety measures the homeowner desires to do once the pool would be installed. So does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question, but I would just like to confirm then that the pool would be visible from the street.
I don't believe it would. If it's a if the hedges are taller than 3 feet now, and there would be a requirement to be at least a 48-inch barrier next to the pool. So if it's 1 foot up and 3 feet, if I'm 5 feet tall, I'm looking at a hedge. I'm not necessarily seeing the pool. I think if you go back to our PowerPoint or even the city's PowerPoint, you see a photo facing straight on, and you can't see even the stairs that are adjacent to the home that walk down to the pool from the street.
Could we go back to that site plan again? Is that possible?
Mm-hmm. Ella, there was a copy of the site plan in my PowerPoint. So you can see the site triangle requirement that those hedges would have to be 30 inches in that triangle area.
Yes, and that's my concern, is that I would be able to see that pool from the street. If I'm walking on the sidewalk or driving in my car, the 30 inches would not screen the pool. I'd be able to see that pool area.
Perhaps you would see the pool area no different than you would see if the pool were located where it says Haas Residence 849 Bruce Avenue in the rear yard and you were walking down the street or driving down the street. I mean, perhaps you may, perhaps you wouldn't, depending on the other screening and the area that you come through. So
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Katie, I noticed there was the report cites a misunderstanding of the nature of corner lots, and everybody's touched on it with triple frontage, double frontage corner lots. Can you explain a little further on the city's misunderstanding of corner lot?
Certainly. I mean, the city took issue with the fact that there were many pool examples that were shown in the applicant's original application and in the appeal that they said aren't the same because they were on triple frontage lots instead of corner lots. I think from a practical matter and a homeowner standpoint, if you have to treat 2 yards or 3 yards as a front yard setback, it's somewhat irrelevant. You're still having to use a front yard as defined in the code as your primary recreation area. And so we don't feel that the distinction between a triple frontage lot versus a corner frontage lot is defined in the code. While it discusses corner lots and it defines what a double frontage lot is, that distinction is irrelevant because the definitions of front yard setbacks don't change.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mike.
Chris raised a really interesting point here because, yeah, with the side triangle, the one in the front doesn't bother me, but the one on the side does. And if there's a 4 foot high, it has to be a 4 foot high fence for liability concerns, then there will be something even there that's 4 foot high that's going to block the view or could block the view. And I'm trying to get around that, how that's going to work. That you don't have any, you have a fence that's 4 foot high, and now you're going to, what I liked about it was the high fences, you know that if you're swimming in your pool, you'll have some privacy. But you knock that down with a 4 foot fence and which is higher than you can see through. I mean, I'm having trouble how this fence is going to work on next to the driveway, and where I saw the basketball stuff there, which is fine. Anyway, can you address how it's going to be high enough to be legal to get in there to keep for liability 4 foot, but still it can be seen through and people can't see it through it? I'm having trouble with that one. Thank you.
Certainly, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, if you see on the aerial, the area to the east of the existing driveway is largely landscaped and has tall palms and is very full. So if you're coming from the east to the west on Gardenia Street, I think most of your view of any of this portion of the area of the pool wouldn't be visible until you're literally right in front of it, because you're traveling west until you got to the existing driveway, you wouldn't have any visibility there because of the shrubs on the eastern side of the property. With respect to the 48 inches, as you know, the building code has a variety of ways that you can meet that. It doesn't have to be a solid fence. If it was something, so it would have to be something that meets the site visibility triangle as well as the building code. And the houses and the pool contractor haven't defined that specifically, but it would have to marry those two things. I don't think that anywhere in the code it requires structures to be not visible from the street. And in fact, if you look at the aerials of all of the examples that were provided, you can look that there are several pools that are visible from the street. And I don't know that that's a detriment or inconsistent with the community character. This is a community on North Clearwater Beach where you have people sitting in lawn chairs, taking their chairs to the beach, walking a couple blocks. They're sitting in their driveways with their neighbors. It's a community feel and a very social atmosphere. And having even a corner of the pool visible is not a detriment, the same way the patio and fire pit that would not require your approval on the side of the house would not be a detriment. So I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder, but that's not one of the visibility from the street is not one of the criteria of the code. Compatibility and community character is, and as you can see from the examples provided, there are certainly several examples provided in the North Clearwater Beach area of pools which are along roadways.
Anybody else have any other questions of the applicant?
I do, Mike.
Go ahead, John.
Katie, just trying to, I'm looking at the plan here on the screen here. I just want to make sure I'm looking at correctly. The north setback or the north, the north building setback and east building setback, am I reading that right, as 5 feet?
The east building setback is 5 feet and the north building setback is 5 feet, yes.
So the principal structure is 5 feet on each side existing right now on this lot.
And so this would basically say that each setback is 5 feet, yes.
So we're looking at this, and because it being 13 inches or greater than 12 inches, we're looking at it as a principal structure again, not specifically as a pool.
Correct.
An accessory.
Correct. So it's basically saying that you would have 3 5-foot setbacks.
Do we have any, I'm looking at, I'm sorry. I'm looking at some of the photos that were provided in the report and everything else, and on some of these structures, principal structures, whether they're garages or whatever, are any of those have 5-foot setbacks? I mean, obviously, if this was an interior lot, we probably aren't sitting here today.
Correct. If this were an interior lot, we certainly wouldn't be sitting here today. If in the PowerPoint, you go to the page that is examples of other principal structures in the vicinity. And as we stated in the application and in the appeal, this was done off of measuring on Google Maps and GIS. So this was not done on surveys, but if you flip, it's about, there you go, back one. If you go back one again, Ella, there you go. So 37 Bohemia Circle is 0 feet. 907 Lantana is approximately 15. 830 Bay Esplanade, approximately 13. 928 is approximately 12 feet. 1050 Bay Esplanade is approximately 6 feet. Those are pools. On the next page are a variety of other structures that range from 3.5 to 4 feet at 847 El Dorado up to 15 to 18 feet at 840 Bay Esplanade. So these are all ranges of the less than 20 feet on the front setback.
Right, and those are considered principal structures, again, what we're looking at here.
Correct.
I want to go back to that one, though, that wasn't, that you had that at 37 Bohemia Circle, page before.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that pool appears to be right along 2 frontages.
Yes. And this was one of the examples that honestly we had the most disagreement with staff as to why the staff didn't consider this to be an example of a similar property. I mean, the fact that this has, well, the staff considers this 3 frontages, even though it's a pointy corner like that. I think with all intents and purposes, it's a pool that's on a right of way. In fact, it's on 2 rights of ways, visible from both. So it certainly points to the same type of request.
Well, that's what I'm really looking at here. You got 2 frontages that it's hitting on here, not only, so 2 out of the 3 are actually 3 frontages, even though quote unquote being a dual frontage or triple frontage lot.
Certainly, and you know, not to make this more confusing than it already is with the accessory structure versus principal structure, but Ms. Crandall explained that accessory structures have to be set behind a principal structure to be acceptable in a front setback. And honestly, that's a form over function distinction when it comes to these provisions of the code. If you look on your screen at 928 Bay Esplanade, it's very likely that that was approved as an accessory structure because the edge of the pool is behind that taller building that's on the north side of that parcel. But from a practical standpoint, that doesn't look any different than what's being proposed today. just because it's set a few feet back from the front leading edge of that structure. And that's one of the frustrations. At 907 Lantana, you can see that the full pool is along the right of way. So whether it's 5 feet back or 10 feet back or 20 feet back, it's still shown there on the full frontage.
This is Chris. Are you done, John? I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, Katie, I'm wondering if the owner is open to possibly moving the pool. And I just want to elaborate on my concern is, again, that sort of if it fits with the character and what I'm seeing elsewhere. Some of these other aerials I'm looking at, we have screening and fence so it can obstruct the pool. Now, in the site plan I'm looking at, we just can't do that. But it looks like it could potentially be done if we were to move the pool slightly so you could completely screen it and it's not visible from the frontage. Do you know if is that potentially an option?
I defer to Mr. Daniel whether that's an option in this proceeding.
Okay.
Chris, I'm going to ask you to repeat that question for me one time, please.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to confer with my client.
Okay. So my concern is that in this site plan we have before us, we have some site triangles that are preventing the pool from being completely obstructed in the current layout. So we have the pool adjacent to the frontage in the front yard of the site. So these other examples we're looking at, we have a different scenario in that they're able to obstruct the pool with surrounding it by fence or landscape completely. And I'm just wondering with this case and this site plan, if we could if the applicant is open to shifting the pool so they could completely obstruct the pool from the street.
Yeah, under 4-504B, you have the ability to modify the decision of the planning department. So you could do that. Ideally, you'd have the applicant's consent to do that, but you don't require it either under your code. So if you did that, then the applicant would be placed in the position of choosing to move forward under the modified conditions or not moving forward.
I see. I would be interested in knowing if the applicant is open to that or not, but obviously they don't have to answer.
And you're proposing to move the pool west approximately 10 feet to get it out of the site visibility triangle?
I don't have the site plan in front of me, but however many feet would be needed to allow some sort of screening between the pool and the site visibility triangle.
The applicant would, yes, they could do that. Thank you, Ella. Yeah, she's moving her arrows to show where so the current edge of pool is right where it says site triangle, and move that forward. So the corner of the pool would be outside of the site visibility triangle.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. That's helpful to know.
Yes.
Anybody have any other questions for the applicant? Okay, so we gave the applicant additional time, and I want to offer the city additional time to speak as well. Just so it's clear, normally when you have cross-examination or closing remarks, you're going over things that have already been put into the record and testimony, but by giving the city additional time, I'm actually allowing them to put in additional commentary because they have, well, I counted on my clock when it was 2:30 when I was told that they were going over, and they were done at 2:34. So I was going to give the city an additional 4 minutes of time. Jay, am I correct on that they can put in to complete their presentation and put in their evidence? Doesn't have to be rebuttal or cross-examination, correct? And you're on mute, Jay.
Yes, I think that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So if the city would like to present some more, then I'll give the city the opportunity now, or we'll continue on to the public hearings, the public comment. I see you there, Ella.
Thank you. I had to figure out how to unmute while presenting. So I'd like to recap. Thank you for the additional time. I think fundamentally the question before you as an appeal is, did we apply the code? Not, do we like the code? Is the code convenient? Is it hard on corner lots? Do we wish there were primary and secondary frontages? That's not the question. We struggle with those questions. Question is, what does the code say? Was it applied? Per the code 3-903D, corner lots shall have 2 fronts and 2 sides. This is a corner lot. They have 2 fronts. Therefore, they have 2 front setbacks. Code requires a 25-foot front setback. There is a lot of reduced front setbacks. The question is there a pattern of 5-foot front setbacks? So this map is showing the properties in blue are the properties that were identified by the applicant's evidence. So, oh, it's actually off my screen, but down here is the Bohemia Circle triple frontage property. We did not review it because it's outside of the immediate vicinity. Further, I've reviewed that property based on other general questions. It appears that pool was permitted pre the current development code, which was in 1999, was adopted in 1999. We did review the evidence. We reserved our detailed analysis for the properties that were closest to the subject property. Subject property shown here with a star. These are the ones that are really closest. So like staff said before, example is 55 Gardenia. The applicant's evidence says approximately 5.5 based on aerial and GIS. When staff did our research, we found a site plan that shows it's 10 foot. We do not have a pattern of a 5-foot front setback. Another example was 849 Mandalay. Again, they said approximately, working with the evidence that they could obtain, 6.8, we found per a site plan that it's 10.75. We reviewed the evidence. We have nothing that shows there is a pattern of a 5-foot front setback. In our research, we did also look at some of the triple frontages. The one closest to the subject property is down here, 840 Bay Esplanade. And per a survey there, they have a front setback, 3 fronts of 14.9, 22.7, and 21.5. So they are nowhere near a 5-foot front setback. So I want to reiterate, we reviewed it against the code. There's multiple criteria that reference the immediate vicinity, which is where we reviewed the evidence against, the immediate vicinity nearest to the subject property, which is different than abutting. There's only 2 abutting properties to the north and to the east. We did differentiate between those 2 criteria. One other thing I want to note, we reviewed them against the residential infill project criteria. That is asking for the most flexibility. I think it's noted in the staff report that the table for the res infill says front setback should be 10 feet to 25. However, these are guidelines that can be varied, which is how they can even ask for the 5 foot. But even that kind of shows that's really going beyond the scope of what's intended and considered for a front setback. 5 feet is not a pattern. Okay. Thank you.
thanks. Sorry about that. So I was starting to say we're going to proceed now with the public hearing portion of this. I don't see any other questions or comments from staff for the staff. So is there anyone in chambers that would like to provide public comments on this particular matter?
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, I didn't hear what you said when you were on mute. Did you want to go through a cross-examination process? I know there's been plenty of questioning back and forth, but that is part of the quasi-judicial.
That's true. Thank you very much for bringing it up, Jay. So yes, there's opportunity for cross-examination. Staff has that opportunity first. Does the staff have any cross-examination questions of the other witnesses? No, you're shaking your head. Gotcha. Does the applicant have any cross-examination?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'll proceed on now with the public hearing, with the public comment section of the hearing. Is there anybody in chambers that wishes to speak on this matter? They have 3 minutes each. Seeing none, then we'll continue on with, there's nobody on Zoom that I'm aware of. We do have 2 people on the phone, or we did. The first one to have called in was okay. Ms. Preston, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. Well, you need to be sworn in first. Pat, could you swear in Ms. Preston?
Yes. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Preston, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Linda Louise Ross Preston. I'm a resident of the North Beach area at 805 El Dorado Avenue. I also work as a full-time real estate agent for Coastal Properties Group and Christie's International, and have been doing that for about 6.5 years now. Mr. and Mrs. Haas are not only friends of mine, but they're clients. I can speak professionally to their case, having had their home listed a number of years ago, temporarily while they considered selling it, and also as an agent who sells quite a bit of property, and including luxury properties on the north end of Clearwater Beach. I did pull some statistics based on MLS data. I think we can all agree that the addition of a pool to any home, especially on the north end of Clearwater Beach, is of value not only to the homeowner who installs the pool, but also to the neighborhood in general and to the city as well. Of course, it's going to raise the tax bases of the city. It's also going to help to increase local property values, which is beneficial to anyone in the surrounding neighborhood. So having said that, just in terms of marketability, I pulled some statistics based on sales within the past 6 months of single family residences in the Mandalay subdivision only. And it shows that properties with a pool sell on average, the active days on market is 55 days, versus properties which do not have a pool are active days on market average of 132 days. So properties with a pool sell more than twice as fast, almost 3 times as quickly as those without a pool, based on demand and marketability of those properties. So not only will the addition of the pool be increasing the property values nearby, but also the marketability of properties, showing high demand and doing a favor, if you will, for all of the neighbors in the surrounding neighborhood. I think their proposal for the pool, which I have reviewed many times, is beautiful. It would add value to the neighborhood. It would be lovely to walk past. And also I would ask you to note that there's a property at 964 Mandalay Avenue, which is also a corner lot. It's the one adjacent to Juniper Street, just before you enter Carlisle. It has 2 front yards based on Juniper and also on Mandalay Avenue. And that pool is very visible on the east side on Mandalay Avenue. It just recently sold for $1 million. It is just shy of 2,200 square feet. So that property was not even on the market for a day, I don't believe. Anyway, having said that, you do have examples on the beach that property has very, very, very shallow setbacks on the north and east side. The pool is on the south side of that property adjacent to the house. I've seen a number of houses in my experience that have varied setbacks and very small setbacks as well to accommodate entertaining area and enjoyment for the homeowners. So I would say that this is very much in line with what I see in the neighborhood. Not only is it in line with what I see in the neighborhood, it's going to be beneficial to not only the homeowners, but also to everyone around them in a number of different ways. And I would very, very strongly support your approval of Mr. and Mrs. Haas's plan.
Thank you very much. We have two other callers as well. The next one that called in was Nascarella. You have to press *6 to unmute yourself. Are you still? You're still. I can see you still on the phone, but. Nascarella, am I saying that name correctly? Okay. If you can hear me again, you got to press *6 to be able to unmute. There we go.
Thank you.
You need to be
Good
sworn
afternoon.
first. Before you speak, please give us your name and then be sworn by the clerk.
Sure. Peter Nascarella, spelled Nascarella. I live at 844 Lantana Avenue, Clearwater Beach.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, sir, proceed.
And I live at 844 Lantana, and I'm neighbor to the house, the Haas family at 849 Bruce on the Gardenia side of their home. And I share the same symptoms as I'm a corner lot at 844 Lantana. I am and have been a realtor here on Clearwater Beach since 1998, and I've been involved in over 100 sales of homes, including selling 849 Bruce 3 different times. I've witnessed dramatic growth and changes Clearwater Beach has experienced. The 900 or so homes on the North Beach have changed in a lot of ways, mostly to host more full-time residents, much like the Haas family, along with other owners who now provide a major tax base for the city of Clearwater. I'm in favor of the pool plan, and as it will enhance property values and will be a source of enjoyment for a growing family. Most of us owners on the North Beach take pride in our homes and maintain our properties to the standards of the newer construction that has come to the North and South Beach. The Haas property is meticulously maintained, and the North Beach community can take pride in its appearance, and the addition of the pool would only enhance our community and in a small way would add to the job economy for a pool service. And one other thing, as an anecdote, one would have to look for the pool while walking north or, east or west on Gardenia or driving by. Thank you for the 3 minutes and any extended time that I have, you can share with other people. Thanks again.
Thank you. All right. That we have one more caller, I believe. The last name is, or name is Samuel. If you've unmuted yourself, thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Please.
My name is Samuel Hudkin.
Okay. The clerk will need to swear you in.
You need to spell your last name, please.
That's Hutkin.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
My name is Samuel Hudkin. I'm actually the president of the Clearwater Beach Association. I've been a resident for about 11 years. I've been the president for about 5. The reason that I want to speak on something like this is it's actually the reason I even joined the association. You know, I felt like with code, and I understand, I heard commentary that we know that the code might be a little bit, I don't know, how should I say, wonky. And there's been a lot of talk about looking at all these codes. And even you as a board are probably frustrated with some of the codes that you're trying to, you know, let's just say gleam under. But at the end of the day, you know, nailing someone for 5 feet worth of paver or things like that, which is was one of the reasons why I joined the association, to try and help my fellow neighbors. I mean, all the things that have been said, obviously I agree upon, and many of the neighbors in the neighborhood I represent, and there's been petitions that you've seen that everyone feels that this family, and that's another key thing, that it's a family that's trying to come here. It's not a short-term rental. It's not someone who's only going to be here 50% of the time. It's a family that is trying to enjoy the property, actually augment, and again, bring more beautification to our neighborhood. I understand that if we were talking about, even though we're gaming this as principal structure, that if someone was abutting and was coming close, but this 5 feet is really, I understand there's 2 frontage, but it's really used as their backyard more than anything. And it's not their front, and as far as what they're going to be utilizing it for. And it really does create an asset to the neighborhood more than it is any kind of deterrent or a problem. So, you know, my thoughts are the fact that they are trying to augment the property in a positive way. And we are trying to look at this, you know, when we look down towards the commercial area, we've seen setback issues, even the city has done, where we've come with 5-foot, you know, encroachment, and there's been flex that's happened. I believe that a family that is trying to actually augment this neighborhood in a positive way should deserve that flex, and try to, you know, help them out and make sure that they stay here. I also want to point out that realtors have mentioned about sales. They have not had, there was a time, I think, that 2 sales did not happen because they didn't have a pool. That because they did not have a pool, they were not able to sell their house. And that, I think, is a perfect example of how, when we talk about likability, that, you know, that's how, you know, much of a big difference it is by having a pool. But again, they're here to stay. And I think that this pool is not obtuse. It's not going to be something that's going to be too grandiose. It's actually going to be covered in many ways and not even seen. So I just don't think it's a problem. Many of my fellow neighbors, and I'm talking about hundreds who we've talked to, all agree that this is something that they think is a positive thing. Thank you so much, board, for listening.
Thank you for your time. Just confirming with staff that we don't have anybody else that's out there waiting on the phone, correct? Okay, and there's nobody else in the chambers or anything like that. So now we're moving on to closing remarks by staff. They've got 3 minutes.
Ellen Crandall, thank you. Just to recap, the case before you is an appeal. We mentioned the 3 criteria that must be satisfied, all 3, in order to uphold the appeal. As I stated before, staff applied the code correctly. We apply the code that we have, not the code that we wish we had or what would be convenient. We apply the Community Development Code as it is written. The proposal is not consistent with code and is not consistent with the general intent and purpose of the Community Development Code. We review the evidence. There is not a pattern of a 5-foot front setback to a primary structure. Thank you for your time in this matter.
Now we have closing remarks by the applicant.
Thank you. As Ms. Crandall said, this is an appeal. And so rather than looking at the original criteria of approval, we're looking at the basis of appeal, which is the department misconstrued or misapplied the code. The department misuses the statement in definition of immediate vicinity. Even today, there was no specific definition. On one hand, they want it to be the adjacent neighbors, and they point out the neighbors on Gardenia. On the other, they go a block out, but very, in our opinion, immediate vicinity in this instance is likely the North Clearwater Beach neighborhood, at least the central part, excluding Carlowell and Mandalay Point, which was not provided in there. There's a misunderstanding of the applicant's burden to show a pattern of development, not exact precedent. There are examples of primary structures with reduced front setbacks, And the applicant provided several examples of patterns of development of the use of these side yards for recreational purposes, and also showing that there were primary structures in the front setback, especially on corner lots and triple frontage lots. Further, the development order goes on to make a distinction, which is completely arbitrary and not supported by the code, of a triple frontage lot versus a double frontage, and somehow excludes the triple frontage examples from those, meaning that there is some sort of pattern of development. Secondly, the department did ignore the competent and substantial evidence provided and simply dismissed the evidence of both the initial submittal and the post-DRC resubmittal, and did not provide any contrary evidence. The evidence presented today of specific dimensions and patterns and surveys is the first time that the applicant has heard that information. It was not provided at DRC or otherwise. This does meet the intent and harmony of the code of a residential infill, which is providing a better place, a more consistent home, and one that upgrades the vicinity. And that is the general intent and harmony of the code. As this does meet the criteria for approval of an appeal, we would respectfully request you grant the applicant's appeal, and we would be considerate of a condition to move that pool west if the board would so consider. Thank you so much for your time today, and we do appreciate it.
Thank you. And that will close the public hearing portion for today. Now we have board deliberation and a vote. Does anybody from the board wish to have any comments on this, make any comments on this? On matters like this, that's taken a while. We usually would do that. Mike Flannery seemed to raise his hand first and Mary Lau second, so I'll go with Mike first.
I'll go second. I believe the staff has acted correctly in what they've done to hold to the code when and not let, they can't make decisions on these type of things. That's their job. They're not supposed to be deciders. They're not judges. They're looking at the code and enforcing it. And I agree with what they've done. But I'm looking at about three questions here. First of all, I don't understand this 13-inch height thing. Measured from what? I mean, this isn't a floodplain. Someplace there was a 0 foot, and if it was just 2 inches higher, this pool would be okay. And to what are you measuring on the pool? The lip of the pool, the top of the pool, the gutter, the whatever. So this thing is designed, to me, the 13 inches is to say you can't put in a barbecue or you can't put in another building that's going to be a structure. This is less than the height of my my garden plot that I have in my front yard. I have a raised garden in my front yard, quite illegally, by the way. So that's the first. I don't think this 13 inches is really quibbling in this condition for a swimming pool that everybody's used to. I also, the sight distance does concern me, and I would sure like to see it move back, because one way or another, now it's been this way forever anyway, that hedge has been up there and they've not made it cut it down. So I was looking at it previously as the hedge hid everything. And I think they will want a hedge because they're going to be swimming and people are going to be driving by, and it's going to be uncomfortable for them to wave at everybody going by. But I think if they can move it forward out of the sight distance, that solves that problem as far as I'm concerned. As the structure was a concern, I would mention that there's the impervious surface ratio question, which I think a little bit of understanding of what the impervious surface ratio really is. It's to reduce runoff rapidly off a property and also make sure that enough infiltrates in the ground so it can be pumped. You know, you can maintain the groundwater. Well, the water falling on the pool itself is really just a big tank. That's really a pervious ratio in the way that things actually function. I know it has a concrete bottom, etc., but when they pump it out, it's going to be just like a retention pond. So the impervious ratio is not a concern. So I just think that it makes a livable house. I don't think if I drove by this thing, I would have any concerns about a pool being there where people are enjoying their water. They're what the beach is about. So I'm just saying I like it. It's a tough question, but I don't think it diminishes the neighborhood at all. I think it's going to actually add to it. That's in my opinion. Thank you.
Mary?
Yes, I kind of agree a lot with what Mike just said. When I started looking at this one before this hearing started, I was on the fence, no pun intended, because of the fence and because my perception, which was verified by the testimony today, that if this was built as designed, the only change that anyone would notice from the street is the landscaping improvement and the removal of pavers on the Bruce Avenue side. And that to me leaned me in the direction of thinking it might be unreasonable for the city to deny the application. On reflection though, and listening to the testimony here today, and unless Mr. Dano tells me I'm not allowed to consider testimony heard today in this quasi-judicial hearing, I am persuaded that the city is correct in their argument that we may not like what the code says, but they have consistently applied, per the testimony today, they've consistently maintained avoidance of a 5-foot front setback in this residential area. And I don't think we need to, and I certainly personally don't want to, be writing a definition of immediate vicinity into the code where there isn't one now. I don't think we need to, because I don't think it makes any difference. I think what the city is arguing is that they are happy with their infill code provisions that look to an 11 to 25 foot flexibility for front setback, and that 5 is a bridge too far. I don't think, and I'm not prepared to decide as a matter of this appeal that the city's decision was unreasonable, arbitrary, or discriminatory. I think they're trying to be consistent in their application of the code as it's written. So I'm always willing to be talked out of a position, but I'm leaning toward upholding the city's decision.
Anybody else from the board? Jordan, I see you unmuted your mic right away.
Yeah, very complicated, challenging item to review without question. You know, I think that the code does allow for a 5-foot setback. That's, you know, the city has that ability to make that determination for a front setback of 5 feet. Otherwise it wouldn't even be on the table at all, right? So it is allowed to be 5 foot as a primary structure. There are, as a person that lives in this area, you know, just outside of it, but right there and walk in it all the time, the neighborhood, you know, the challenges I think really comes down to immediate vicinity. And I think Mary, you hit on it, and everybody else has hit on it. There is without question front primary structures within 5 or close to 5 feet or somewhere within it. Not that we have significant data provided today to say which and every one there is, because we don't know what the immediate vicinity is. But North Clearwater Beach, North Beach is LMDR zoning. LMDR zoning, when you look at the zoning map for all of Clearwater, probably makes up 60% of Clearwater. North Clearwater Beach is not the same as Clubhouse Estates. North Clearwater Beach is not the same as, you know, other areas within Clearwater with the exact same zoning and maybe more regular development patterns from different periods of time. North Clearwater Beach has semicircular streets. It has angled streets. It has triple frontage lots, has double frontage lots, has corner lots. It has a very unique pattern throughout the entirety of North Beach. And so I find it hard to say that when you're considering a pattern of immediate vicinity, to limit it to adjacent homes. I think that North Clearwater Beach is the neighborhood that we're referencing, and there are clearly examples within it that have 5 foot or close to 5 foot front setbacks as primary structure. And then when I take into consideration that this primary structure is 13 inches above grade, it's not a negative visually. It doesn't affect the neighbors. In fact, the neighbors have come out in forces to support that this is an improvement to their neighborhood, who would know that, in my opinion, better than perhaps others that don't live in that neighborhood that might be making a decision based on an LMDR zoning that is ubiquitous and not specific. And so while I am very torn by it, I'm also tempted to grant the appeal.
Do we have any other comments from any of the other board members?
This is Chris Anaskevich, and you know, I think Jordan just hit on a lot of my thoughts there regarding the setback, and Mary did as well, and that has been the sticking point for me, is the setback. As far as the community aesthetic, I think the applicant can work with the site plan and make it work so it's not visible from the street, and I think that's important. But I'm willing to consider this appeal and go the way of the homeowner based on some of the comments that Jordan has just mentioned.
Do any of the others have any comments? You don't have to. Just asking to make sure we have all of our deliberation. Brian, you seem to be shaking your head. John, you've got a good poker face there. So, okay. You know, the one thing that I think that from my perspective that I'm still kind of mulling through in my head right now is really the going down to the 5 feet. I mean, there's a reason the code allows them to look at from 10 feet to 25 feet. And one of the callers characterized it as being a 5-foot encroachment. What we're really doing is talking about taking a 25-foot setback and reducing it all the way down to 5. So you're moving it by 20 feet. And that kind of doesn't sit well with me if there aren't a lot of other homes in that neighborhood, in that vicinity, and across the board that take a setback that far and making an adjustment without some real good cause for it. So that's the part that I'm kind of hung up on as I look at this overall. Jay, is there anything that you can add from the standpoint of what, as a board, our obligation is to weigh, or do you think that the comments that have been stated so far accurately outline what we can consider and do?
Yeah, it's a difficult decision. I encourage you, though, to simply keep your criteria in mind. One of the things that I think is a bit confusing in this case is the evidentiary standard at issue. Where does the competent standard evidence play into? We know from various appellate proceedings that depending on where you are in that process, the evidentiary standard falls away, and that's not what you're looking at anymore, depending on where you are on the appellate ladder. And very candidly, the city's code appears to fall away on the substantial evidence portion in terms of what the staff did. Let me tell you what I mean by that. What you're here to do today on this application is to determine, based on the competent substantial evidence presented by the applicant or other party, so your packet, what you've heard today, that each of the 3 criteria are met, that the decision appealed from misconstrued or incorrectly applied the provisions of the development code. Now, what it doesn't say is that the staff or the department misapplied those codes. So it seems to me to be a little bit of a really a review of the law. Did the staff, there was a discussion about immediate vicinity. I think that's a thing that's a proper subject of misconstruing or incorrectly interpreting the code. What I think I heard the applicant's attorney, I don't think she argued it quite this way, was that there's competent substantial evidence before you today that the department's decision is not based on competent substantial evidence. I don't know that that's what she intended to argue, but that's sort of the way that I heard it in my mind. That's not really what's in my view what's before you today. You're really looking for competent substantial evidence at the first that the department misconstrued or incorrectly interpreted the provisions of the development code. Board member Loud discussed earlier the Snyder decision, which to me was The first case following the Local Government Comprehensive Planning Act that made this distinction between legislative decisions and quasi-judicial decisions. And since that time in 1993, those cases are all over the place. They're pretty much everywhere in terms of what's done, what isn't done. One of the things that does emerge, though, is that on appeal, and we don't do a lot of these, so you all don't sit as an appellate body that often. The Snyder case is the first, but certainly not the last case to express the idea that on appeal, it is not the function of the appellate body to reweigh the evidence or to substitute its judgment for that of the lower body. I think that the city's code expresses that in some regards when it talks about misconstruing or incorrectly interpreting the provisions of the code. I leave you with that and suggest and encourage you to confine your analysis to the competent substantial evidence relative to the three-pronged standard on appeal. I hope that's helpful and to not confuse the issues more than they already are.
Thank you. Okay, so having given everybody a chance to speak and get some guidance from our council, does anybody have a motion on APP 2020-00001?
I don't even know how I would make this motion.
Yeah, I don't think it fits with our template. I think you can make a motion to grant the appeal. You can make a motion to deny the appeal. If you're going to grant the appeal, I think from what I'm hearing, that motion could also add a condition to it relative to the movement of the pool location, for example. Am I correct in those two options that we have, Jay?
Yeah, the 4-504B gives you the ability to grant, to issue an order granting, overturning, or modifying the decision appealed from. So I think in this case, an order, if your inclination is to grant the appeal, with that condition, you're both modifying and overturning, which the use of the word "or" I think permits in my view.
It'll probably get some more discussion, but I will make a motion to grant the appeal with the condition of moving the pool to the west so that it is not located, or moving the primary structure to the west so that it does not fall within the site visibility triangles.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I second. Mike Flannery.
Thank you.
Motion made and seconded. I know we've already had a lot of discussion. Is there any further discussion on the motion now?
Do we need to expand upon that motion in order to allow plantings or fence to obstruct the pool? Is that a concern?
It sounds to me it's within your subject matter. It's within our purview to add that as a condition if you'd like to amend the motion, or if the maker is amenable to that.
If Mr. Beher is open to that, I would like to amend that to include that the pool area is screened with landscape and a fence, so the pool is not visible from the street.
Okay, is there a height that you're including in that, or, you know? I think that from a privacy standpoint, I think that, I'm not opposed to it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I just don't know that it necessarily needs to be amended in the motion, but I'm open to discussion. Katie, or Michael, I see Katie up there. I don't know.
I see her up there, but the public comment portion of it's kind of done unless you guys one of you has a specific question for her. I'm not going to allow her to just speak.
I mean, do we ask if the homeowner is amenable to screening it as part of this?
I would like
that question.
Sorry.
Katie, the question to you for your clients are whether they'd be amenable to screening in some respect.
Yes, they are. And I was just going to highlight, and Ms. Clayton can correct me if I'm wrong, the fence code of the city allows for a fence to be located along the right of way so long as it's no more than 48 inches tall, even on a secondary frontage. So there would not need to be any extraordinary approval to allow for that type of fence, unless you wanted to require a fence higher than 48 inches. I'm looking at Gina to be sure I quoted that code provision correctly.
Sure, the fence cannot be higher than 4 feet.
Okay.
So, but this board could allow for a higher fence if that is what they were desiring. Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the fence code limits fences in this location to 4 feet in height and also requires a 3 foot wide landscape area on the street side of the fence.
So I will amend my motion to include a fence of no more than 48 inches tall and no less than 48 inches tall, and appropriate landscape screening to create, or appropriate landscape screening of 48 inches in height minimum as well.
This is Chris Askevich. I second that motion.
If Mike's okay with it, since he seconded the motion originally, then it's amended as a motion and we should be in good shape.
That's fine with me.
Okay. So the motion, the amendment was acceptable to the maker, is accepted by the second. I think if I remember Robert's Rules of Order correctly, we're in good shape there. So the motion would be to approve the appeal with the condition that just make sure I'm stating this correctly, that it be relocated further to the west and that there be screening added up to for the 48 inch that's allowed by the code.
And move to the west so that it falls outside of the site visibility triangle.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions on the motion as posed and amended? There being none, then we'll go through a roll call vote. Mr. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Brian Barker?
Yes.
Jordan Behar?
Yes.
Mike Flannery?
Yes.
Mary Lau?
Regretfully, I'll vote no. I'm happy to see I'll probably be overruled. It's a pretty project.
John Quattrocki?
Yes.
And as chair, I'm going to join with Mary on the way I'm looking at it from a legal perspective and vote no, but we have a 5-2 vote, so the motion passes and the appeal is granted. Is there anything else that we need to do at this point, Jay, since we haven't done appeals? Am I missing anything?
Sir, you're good.
All right, so that concludes the appeal matter on our agenda and the regular agenda items. Do we have any director items today?
No, none today.
Okay. There being nothing else, then thank you all for participating in our first ever Zoom meeting, and our meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.